Yeah. But before that date, before today's event, which happened on Friday,
yes,
it was mixed for a number of people. Many didn't know what to expect. Some cities, people shut themselves in, didn't come out until the verdicts were handed down, which raised questions about what had happened at the Court of Appeal stage. But for you, as a senior lawyer, and then looking at these judgments, what was the significance going back in history up until yesterday?
Well, you know that the judiciary was badly battered last year, so much so that a lot believe that justice cannot be fetched from the judiciary anymore. And for some of us who play daily in that sphere, we were very worried going into Friday. I was a lead counsel in the Plateau governorship case, and so mine could be a little bit overstretched because I was praying for the governor to win that appeal, and indeed he won the appeal. But the larger picture is the quest for justice. You know, I prayed for justice because I know that we're actually going down. The judiciary, as far as I'm concerned, the quality of judgments we saw at the Court of Appeal, the judgments were very worrisome, extremely worrisome. And I pray that the Supreme Court will come out the way they did on Friday. It's not an issue of APC, PDP, Labour Party, no. It was an issue of rescuing judiciary and bringing back that hope that the common man has in the judiciary. And on Friday, we saw the 8 judgments that were delivered go towards satisfying the quest for justice. You know, and in that bid, the Supreme Court dealt some blow on the Court of Appeal because the judgments, major judgments that were delivered by the Court of Appeal were upturned. I don't know whether the justices know that their judgments have been upturned. And I was in court and I heard what the justices of the Supreme Court said, which raises the question as to whether that court will conform with the cleansing work that the Supreme Court has started. The Supreme Court came out smoking. You can see a court that really wants to restore hope, the hope of the people in the judiciary. And they made certain findings which were not so good for the Court of Appeal. But again, even at the Court of Appeal, I must tell you that we will have to also draw distinction because it is not all the justices, all the judgments of the Court of Appeal that were in error. Some got it right. Even some of the justices of the Court of Appeal frowned at the judgments that the Supreme Court upturned. They frowned at it. They knew that their colleagues were wrong. You know, so it is not all bad for the Court of Appeal. But in the main, those major judgments that the Court of Appeal, as far as I'm concerned, the case of Plateau State, the justices just decided not to follow the precedent. Those cases that were cited at the Supreme Court were the same cases that were cited at the Court of Appeal. For instance, with respect to one of the points, while we were citing Jegede and INEC, the judgment of Supreme Court, the court was relying on Jegede and INEC as delivered at the Court of Appeal. So it was a good day for justice on Friday. And my big brother, Dodo Demian, Dodo SAN, had to coin this phrase, but for the Supreme Court. But for the Supreme Court, a lot would have gone bad. Kano would have been under fire. Plateau State would have been under fire. Zamfara, the case would have worsened. But the Supreme Court saved the day. And today we can beat our chest and say we're going somewhere.
Maybe a baby that was born on that day could have been named, but for the Supreme Court, we've seen, you know, Nigerians give their babies very interesting names, but for God is one of them.
Yes.
So interestingly, looking at some of the judgments, are you surprised that there was no upset? I know that for a number of watchers, those who were looking at cases at the Supreme Court, Kano and Plateau were of particular concern to them, given what had happened at the Court of Appeal in Plateau State, where federal lawmakers had lost their seats and could no longer proceed, and it would seem that the governor's case was the one hanging in the balance. In Kano, he had lost at the tribunal, he had lost at the Court of Appeal, and permutations were that if you've lost in two courts, lower courts, the chances that it will be overturned at the apex court was quite slim. So there were those permutations, and then also the emotions that usually go with politics in places like Kano and Plateau. But other states, Ebonyi, Lagos, and a number of other states, were you surprised that there were no upsets?
I wasn't surprised, and that they wouldn't have been upset, because the law should be certain. The principles that guide our electoral jurisprudence are all settled. And for somebody like me, I knew Lagos appeals were going nowhere. I knew Ebonyi was going nowhere. And that is why we also knew that Kano will go somewhere, Zamfara will go somewhere, Plateau especially will go somewhere. Law is supposed to be certain. When you prepare, as a lawyer, when you prepare your brief and you go to court, you don't need the justices of the court to make a pronouncement for you to know whether you win or not. Because once the principles are on your side, the law is on your side, the case law is on your side, you're heading to victory. The whole noise you're hearing today about the Court of Appeal is that they just refuse to obey the precedent. They fail to do that. In the case of Kanu, like Justice Okoro JSC did say, we pray that such will not arise again, where two parties win the same case and lose. One succeeded, the other one, who was supposed to lose, got consequential orders in his favor. So such a thing is wrong. And then I take you to Plateau State, especially. Going into the appeals, what the policy the court had was that every appeal will be handled by different panels. That is to say, as appeals matured, panels were set up to handle them. But funny enough, in the case of Plateau State, just one panel was set up for the entire cases. Now, as a justice of the Court of Appeal, they came up with the first judgment. It would have signaled that something is wrong with this judgment. But rather than do something about it, the same panel that rendered that erroneous judgment were handed over the rest of the appeals to handle, which means you just determined that all the judgments will go one way. And then that is why you hear people cry today. That's why you hear people cry today. But we thank God for the Supreme Court. But again, as we're thanking God for the Supreme Court, you ask yourself, what becomes of those National Assembly members, those House of Assembly members that have been unjustly removed? I remember the day the judgment came, the governorship judgment came. I addressed the press and I said that my heart bleeds for those ones, National Assembly, State Assembly, whose petitions, whose cases terminate at the Court of Appeal. I said it. And the reason why I addressed those ones was because I knew that the Supreme Court will reverse that judgment that was delivered in respect of the governorship. And they indeed reversed it. In the case of Zamfara, what happened? They said that some ballot papers were not stamped, that they were not signed, and all that.
Is that Zamfara or Kano?
No, in Kano, sorry. Yeah. That some were not stamped, some were not signed. And then Supreme Court made its findings and found out that the same section they were relying on, the next subsection says that even if they were not signed, once there is proof that the ballot papers came from INEC booklet, that they will be countenanced. They did not advert their minds to that subsection. Whether willfully or not, they did not, And then Supreme Court went ahead to make their findings also, to find that over 80% of those ballot papers that were said not to be genuine or come from INEC were actually genuine, and they were substantially in compliance with the provisions of the law, and they admitted them. So this raises issues. But again, this topic cannot be fully treated without at least one saying that the president of the country has tried. Because we know that years back, when manipulations could come from the presidency, the justices will not feel very free to deliver judgments that are called with justice. But in this one, I have a feeling that they were not under pressure. If you were in the court on Friday, you will realize that the judges were at home in their court. and they proudly spoke to their judgment, this is what we should see. As we say, give kudos to the president, we also give kudos to the CJN, Chief Justice of Nigeria, who also allowed his court to deliver what should represent the votes of the people. So we're heading somewhere, but they have taken a lead. The others should follow.
Let's talk about remedy for the those who, considering the Supreme Court judgment on Plateau State, now those who have been unjustly removed, because it would appear that if the Supreme Court has spoken, that's the position of law. What remedies can they seek?
Like I said, I'm in that legal team, and we're looking at it. We're looking at it, but we know that in law, it is said, ubi jus ibi remedium. There's no injury in law without a remedy. So we're looking for that remedy. There must be that remedy somewhere. So we're looking at it, but we're striking a balance also to make sure that in finding that remedy, we do not abuse the process of the court. So we're looking at it. And more importantly also, let's also talk about how all these arose, How did they arise, really? We have to look at it. Where precedents were cited, the doctrine of stare decisis, lower courts, you must obey the judgments of higher courts. We furnished the courts with Supreme Court judgments, and they refused to obey it. They refused to align their judgments with that. You see, I begin to think that if judges are held accountable, it is not enough that you say, that's why there's a court of appeal, that's why there's Supreme Court, you can go up. No, you're not that. You should be accountable. Where counsel tell you that Supreme Court has said this on this point and you willfully decide not to follow it, there should be sanction. If there are sanctions, the justices will begin to see, oh, I can have my way here, but I'll answer questions there.
So at the moment, there isn't any sanction, and it does appear as though this can happen again.
Of course, there's no sanction for now, but this is more like developing news. I don't know what people are doing. I'm not Holy Spirit to know what people are doing, but I know that very many people are bitter. The Plateau legislators are extremely bitter. There's no reason for that. No reason. What do you call structure? We commended cases from Supreme Court that says the Oni case, the Ekiti case. The Supreme Court said even if a political party does not have leadership, even if the leadership is questionable, it does not affect their capacity to nominate candidates, to conduct primaries. The Supreme Court has said that issues relating to nominations and sponsorship are pre-election matters. There are a line of Supreme Court authorities that tell you define pre-election matter as every activity that took place before the main election. They know it. Even the lawyers on the other side, they knew it. But everybody was playing, oh, somehow, when we get to Supreme Court, something will happen. So the law is not kalo. And today, the lawyers have moved on. And that is wrong.
Well, it's something that we're definitely going to see what can be done. So does it mean that there's nothing either the NJC can do in this kind of matter, or they just say, well, their hands are tied?
I'm not a member of NJC, but I know that many times one is told if an error occurs in a judgment, you can appeal.
But this doesn't look like an error.
I'm happy that even the people outside the court know that it's not an error. And so let's see what NJC will do. But I'm sure that one or two people may take it up. Let's see what they will do. But I'm telling you that the justices have moved on.
Wow, because this has huge implications on democracy,
yes,
on what people feel, whether or not they're going to come out tomorrow, or even the kind of impression they have about the judiciary. These are the kind of things that will stay etched, impressed on their mind, saying, this is what happened. So how do they ever correct the image, this kind of scenario?
Left for Court of Appeal to know how they will correct it. But like I said, we're looking at those judgments, and we're looking at the injury, and we're looking at the possibility of assuaging the losses of the people, But
if you were to recommend,
yes,
what would it be?
I said I'm a member of that legal team, and we're actually brainstorming. It's not for me to come to the public and I say this is the way my mind is playing. If I wasn't, maybe I would have said something. But the truth is that I'm persuaded that there should be a window.
It'll be interesting to see in the coming days. But today, judgment continues.
And tomorrow.
Tomorrow as well.
Hearing too.
The Supreme Court is still going to be very busy. And we see that, you know, that of River State is up for hearing today. I cannot ask you if you expect any upsets, but looking at what it is that is being requested, do you have any comments? I mean, the prayers that they're making about the position of an attorney, if I'm not attorney general, accountant general. Do you have any comments around it?
You know, we're trained to recognize that when a matter is in court, it is sub judice.
Indeed.
So we shouldn't comment. But I don't see the Supreme Court that delivered the judgments of Friday doing the wrong thing this week. You know, I don't see.
Whatever the wrong thing is.
Whatever the wrong thing is.
Either today or tomorrow.
Or tomorrow, or this week, or this year. I have chosen to believe that the whole weight of the people's cry has descended on them, and they've decided to see what they can do. You know, institutions. Supreme Court is an institution. Many justices have come and gone. And it's like an alumnus. Those justices who have kept the faith, they will always have a way of getting back to the current justices to ask them, what is happening to our court? You know, everybody, not just the lawyers, not just the litigants, not just the electorate. Everybody is worried. And so I believe that the people, they know all eyes are on them, and they will continue to do the good work they have started. I must praise the CJ, and I must praise especially the presiding Justice Iyan Okoro JSC, who actually coordinated these judgments and who presided over the panel. You know, it takes boldness, it takes courage, it takes knowledge of law to say this is where this will go, and it goes that way.
Well, we hope that the justices of the Supreme Court of Appeal will, as you say, do the right things next time out. Well, that is it today. We thank you for coming on, at least making our time to be here today. We appreciate it. Mr. Meka,
thank you. Just before I leave, I'm so sorry. You know, it's so good to vilify the judiciary, but I am one of those who also praise them when they do well. The tribunal in Jos that we all appeared before, led by Justice Rita Irele Ifije, found in our favor. They found that the court did not have jurisdiction to handle the petition that has been brought by Nantawe. You know, but when the matter got to the Court of Appeal, their judgment was not only set aside, the language was horrible for them. So I also tell them that they have done well, and God will bless them. The 3 judges that were at the tribunal did extremely well. And today, on Friday, the Supreme Court honored them by bringing back their judgment, affirming it. What all Supreme Court held were in line, in tandem with their judgment. And I praise them, I give them kudos. And I pray that they will get you somewhere, not just at the High Court.
Well, yeah, just that those members of the National Assembly now have, what will they say? Well, thank you for coming on. Mr. Meka is the Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Well, we'll talk about sports now, and Ayo will take us through that right now.